Somber but confident and assertive, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on Wednesday in Benue State vowed to convert last weekend's tragedy in the state, which claimed about 200 lives, into prosperity for the people. Tinubu, however, queried the police authorities for not having made any arrests since the killings to show seriousness on the part of the government. The President also charged the Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, Mohammed, to work with his counterpart in the Department of State Service, Tosin Ajayi, in order to apprehend those behind the crime. Likewise, he ordered the Chief of Defence Staff, General Christopher Musa, to flush out criminal elements fomenting trouble in the state and environs without further delay. And Director Abuja School of Social and Political Thought, Dr. Sam Amadi, joins us now to discuss the takeaways from Tinubu's visit to Benue State and the process of reconciliation and healing in the state. Good to have you, Dr. Amadi.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right. So is the president's visit to Benue State a game changer for peace, or we're still beating about the bush on insecurity in that region, you think?
Well, I think, to be fair, it's not anything close to a game changer. I think it's more of maybe political outcomes, good or bad, and there are a lot to say for maybe some good and maybe for some bad. But in terms of game changing, in terms of putting an end to this recurrent tragic situation, I think nothing that happened actually improved that. In fact, one could argue that it worsened because the underlying issue here has to be one of two things: aggression against a community in quest of maybe dominance, ethnic dominance, or land grabbing, or good faith dispute over land ownership. So, and those are solved through strategic policy decision. First, the criminality. We conflate two things. Ethnic disputes can happen, and all over the country there are communities that are struggling and quarreling. Some are in court, some are probably outside the official judicial system. So it's possible, and there could be process, create a committee to sit together, resolve it. Conflict between herders and farmers are going to be recurrent, and it could be solved through strategic initiatives, economic policies, some kind of expanding the pie, give and take. But bare naked criminality of a terrorist nature, the first option, the first layer is, this is terror at a large scale. And so the response should be swift, should be, security-oriented and law enforcement-oriented. So none of that happened in that visit, apart from the plea that communities come together, love one another, share things in common. I mean, that does not move the needle. So it wasn't supposed to be a problem-solving visit. It's supposed to be a response to some perception that the president perhaps was aloof, the president didn't bother, insensitive to this level of tragedy, even after the Pope and political opponents have spoken about it. So it's that the response, and everything was choreographed. You could see. I mean, they welcome Mr. President, the banquet later, if you like to call it banquet, and the holiday, the school kids waving flag, a sense in which the president needed to perhaps redeem his image as, okay, look, I care about you guys, here I am, even though I couldn't get to the real site of the tragedy, and even though I couldn't talk to those who are bereaved, but at least I'm here. So it's nothing towards solution. Again, the first day that happened, I mean, wherever the print was, he could have instructed the Inspector General of Police, all those comments he made about fish them out, get them out, get the criminals, could have been made few minutes after that tragedy. The president issues a statement directing the DSS, directing the police chief, go out guys, and then we'll see movement. So, saying that 2 days after or more in a politically, much more political setting, is not really law enforcement. So again, some things can happen afterward, but that event did not in any way address the underlying issue. It was an intervention that changed the game in that sense.
And you're right, it did seem more of for optics than for solution building. But like you said, there's time for that. But do you feel that some of the statements that the president made yesterday trivialized the scale of bloodshed, misrepresenting the situation ever so slightly, as some critics would suggest, including the Middle Belt Forum, saying that he was disturbingly casual with the response and that he kind of glossed over what was the real issue, which is ethnic cleansing in the region. What do you make of those criticisms?
I think they are fair criticism. Again, Mr. President is, is schooled, a die-in-the-wood politician, and a successful one at that. So he has a tendency to read politics when he should be reading, leadership or reading tragedy. Look, he probably scored some political gains by trying to frame the Middle Belt crisis, the Benue crisis, a tragedy, as a form of, good faith struggle between communities. So in my reading, this is like a hello to Northeast, Northwest, some perhaps extreme persons who probably, in this idea of Fulani thief conflict. So that message may somehow, especially when he's struggling in that zone, may be like, okay, the president didn't quite throw us under the bus. The president created to be like, oh, we mean well, whatever. He was a betrayer of the people who are grieving, totally. First, before he even came, his message was clear. Governor, I've warned you, live in peace. There was even a sense, it was like a political conflict. You and maybe politicians in Benue, of course, we know that the governor and the AGF have some political issues. So it looked like, well, this tragedy is because you're not in good terms with the AGF. So mend fences, come together. That's not the kind of messaging you expect at that moment. So the president was still obsessed with this politicking, the idea of course, we know that all leaders, politicians, mind moments of tragedy and, for political benefit. But they do that through a process of alignment. So they could even cry. They could even, look very sober. They dress differently. They come with black. They probably roll up their sleeve. Those are in a legitimate way politicians can take advantage of tragedy. They do that all over the world. It makes sense. But the difference here is that the president took advantage of the situation in the contra way, not by attunement to the moment, to the people, to their grieving, not by even being a sympathizer in chief, which is what presidencies are, a moment of tragedy. So I think that the statements, and then talking about, you don't have to be liked, they don't like me, but I'm in power. It looked so arrogant, so self-possessed and self-enthused. It didn't quite live up to the fact that, look, this is a president, 200 citizens have been killed, and you are stepping into that place and you have these people who are grieving and you are speaking comfortably to them and telling them, we care so much about you, we are going out to end this crisis and we're going to get these guys. And that's what you're supposed to say. Nothing about yourself, about you being disliked and talking about, and when he talked about rebuilding, the language didn't carry weight. It didn't, it's like, okay, we're going to, make good. We're going to provide development to that. That was really, to be fair, very tragic moment for anybody who is thinking around the president as somebody sympathetic, engaged, and sensitive. So he kind of, solidified this perception his enemies or political opponents have that president doesn't care enough, president is aloof, is insensitive, he's basically more concerned with politics and political outcome. And the way that visit was presaged with the governor issuing those memo, getting school kids to wave flags and wave and line up, that's not that day. That day required, the president from day one will look sombre, will look really grieving, and every action will align with the fact that this is an avoidable tragedy and the state is not happy and the president is leading this charge to succor the people and end this tragedy. I didn't say that. So the critics are right, absolutely, that the president didn't speak to the people who are hurting. He spoke to the political soundbites that probably has more political impact for him And he tried to, not rock the boat when he actually has to speak so clearly against, invaders and aggressors.
All right, Dr. Amadi, a quick one here, briefly. Still talking specifics, the president urged Governor Hyacinth earlier to allocate land for ranching. Do you think this is a major factor regarding skirmishes and killings in Benue State? And this has been lingering for some time now, even beyond the scope of this administration.
Absolutely correct. Okay, look, these solutions should be rigorously considered. So, assuming the president has come to the conclusion from briefing and expert view that ranching could be a very good solution to, let's give it to the president. He probably has more intel than we do. He probably have experts advising. But the point is, that's not the forum for that. That's not the forum to announce a controversial policy. Look, Buhari started this idea of maybe some special land to do ranching, and there are many constitutional and economic arguments against it and for. One example would be, why would the state provide cattle rearing is a private business. We know that states through industrial policy can support sectors, but that will have to be done in a broad way without necessarily spending for named individuals. That's one. Secondly, people argue there are great land, maybe in the northwest, in the northeast. You look at the history of the north central, the middle belt particularly, political history. It looks like kind of stoking the fire again to ask that people give land, which is really what they're fighting against. So I think that even if that's a real solution, it has to be kind of, you come to it through some better strategic communication, good faith, deal with the communities, bottom up, so people have, okay, maybe, giving land for ranching is a win-win for both the farmers and the rearers. But this is not what you announce when 200 people have been killed, those 200 people and their families believe they were killed because invaders want to take their land.
Very well said. Very well said, Dr. Amadi.
Sure.
Unfortunately, we could continue, but time has gone away from us. Thank you so much for joining us on this conversation. Always a pleasure to have you on the program.